Hey, we're Saints. Father Chris, Deacon Greg, coming to you live. Happy Memorial Day to all of you beautiful people out there. As we film this lesson, we are celebrating this wonderful holiday in the Orthodox world, not even in the Orthodox world, but the American world. It's one of our national holidays, and it's a day that we have memory. We remember all of those people who lost their lives, gave their lives. So thank you to all those people and their families, and good to see you. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. I have some fun things to share with the tribe.
I think that's going to be fun. I want to hear that all.
But
Nothing.
oh, nothing.
Going to
So
the Pirates
yesterday,
League.
not yesterday, last week, my youngest child graduated. She matriculated from high school.
Yay.
So here you can see a picture of my little Amelia.
That deserves applause.
Yeah, she did good. She did good. Look how cute she is. So that's my youngest is out the house now. And it was, obviously I'm extremely proud of the kid. I mean, she really is a rock star. Listen to this. I'm going to brag. I'm bragging. She was top 5% of her class. But here's what's like the ultimate daddy brag moment. She missed the top 1% by 0.1 in her GPA. But let me tell you what happened. When she was in 8th grade, she took an advanced class. They counted it in high school as an advanced class, but it wasn't weighted. And she couldn't get rid of it. So in other words, because of that one class that she got an A in 8th grade that wasn't weighted, it lowered her GPA because it wasn't weighted like an AP class was. And so she was in the top 5. I'm sorry, Amelia, but I'm still proud of you.
So sad.
I know. Is that the best of all first world problems to complain about? My kid and that's the other thing. GPAs, what the hell is that all about? Would you 4.0, man? There's no 4.7. Like, what is that? I know.
It doesn't exist anymore.
4.0?
4.0. You got to get above 4.0
I know.
to be competitive.
But
otherwise, you're just so like my 3.6 is like looking real bad now.
But I can never understand, how do you get a 4.6 out of 4.0? Like, I don't understand. Anyway, she did. Whatever. Good girl. Proud of you. So at graduation and matriculation and all of that kind of stuff, I started thinking about proud, obviously, as parents. You are obviously proud parents as well of those beautiful two. And people ask me, all right, so the setup, I know probably many know this, but not for all the audience. My oldest is away in college on one end of the country, and my youngest is just about ready to go. She will be on literally the other side of the country in college. And so my bride and I will be empty nesters for the first time. And though they've both gone away and traveled and all that stuff, and we've, been a home alone, this is like a different world. And so people have asked me, hey, Father, are you sad? And as I think about it, like, am I sad that they're gone? I said, no. I mean, not even a little bit. I mean, of course we will miss our children, right?
Mhm.
The time we have around the table, the instruction, the conversation, all that kind of stuff. But we have been raising those children to be lions, right? Since the very day the first one was born and the very day the second one was born, we've done everything we can to raise them to go out and conquer the world. And now, as they are doing that, it's freaking awesome, right? It's fun to watch. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
And it's gloriousness. And so as I celebrate for my youngest and at this new point in my life, right, where my kids are, adults. I mean, they're women now. They're not just little girls anymore, though they're always my little girls. But they're out there doing it. And so I thought, why don't you and I have a convo today about all that stuff? Raising chitlins. You know what I mean? Like, what are the things? What are the struggles? First, maybe we start with that. What are the challenges that they face in the world, that you and I and others as parents face in the world, and the uprearing and the approaches and all that kind of stuff? And then maybe we talk about like God and what he has to say about all that stuff, how we should be raising our kids. What's the, all that good stuff. So with that being said, does that sound like a fun topic?
I think it's a great topic. I am in a similar situation. As you are aware, my daughter recently graduated from preschool.
Yes, glorious.
And we had that whole matriculation
Do you have a picture?
process. I don't have a picture. I didn't load a picture. I have pictures. She wore a crown of leaves, and it was beautiful. And
A crown of leaves.
yeah, they made a crown of leaves
That's
instead of the mortar boards. It was great. You wonder, like, in the same way that you're as much as I'm joking that we're in similar situations, we're not. But But there's that whole thing out in front of her now. Like, did
Yeah.
we make the right decision as to what kindergarten we're going to send her to? Are we choosing the right schools for her? Are we preparing her now as she's going through that process? And my son as well. Are we preparing them so that they will actually be able to face what's out there,
Mhm.
what they're going to start encountering? And who are we surrounding them with in those scenarios so that as they're out there doing it, they're going to be reinforced? Like, it's funny. So the older one is leaving preschool going into kindergarten. The younger one is leaving daycare going into preschool. And in both scenarios, what's hilarious is they learn things from the kids that they're around.
Yeah.
So they bring stuff
Yeah.
around, you know. My daughter's into this whole watch this phase of life where everything she does, she says, watch this, watch this, watch this. I've started saying, I will only watch if it's going to be different than what you told me, what you did last time you
yeah.
said, watch this. But now he's saying, watch this.
That's so funny.
Like, it's great. Like, I walked in the door last night. We have a sunken living room, and he said, "Hey, Dad, watch this." He said, "Hey, Baba, watch this." And he literally took 3 hops and then hopped down the step and thought it was the funniest thing and was laughing. And then he got back up the step and said, "Hey, Baba, watch this." And I said, "It's got to be different." He took 4 hops and then
Yeah,
hopped
good
on.
for him.
He did good. But they're in that like mimicking stage where they're following whatever's surrounding. So how are we giving them that foundation? What is the foundation then that we're giving them so that when they're being influenced by other things? That's my big question that I'm struggling with now.
So listen to the question you asked. What foundation are we giving them?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes one of the great challenges is as you are planning kindergartens and planning preschool for Johnny, and I mean, in some sense, I didn't plan my kids' college, but do we have to let them educate our children? That's what they're there to do. But do we let them give foundation, or do we give foundation?
Well, I think it's a combination of the two, right? Like the choices that we make about where we send them for preschool, kindergarten, all of those things, those are part of the puzzle pieces, for lack of a better term, that go into the foundation that we're giving them. But we need to be the one setting the foundation. Otherwise,
Yeah.
what are we doing there? I mean, it's our job as parents, the way that I understand it, to set that foundation so that when they get out there and the parts of those foundations that we're providing, like, look, we put her in this kindergarten knowing that we can pull her out of that kindergarten if it's not going the way that we want it to. And then we can set her in the other kindergarten that was like, it wasn't that it was a option B, it was option A1. We
Yeah.
think this one is going to do a little bit more for the to support the foundation that we're giving her rather than the other place. But if we need to,
Yeah, I got it. But you said I was totally going to diverge from you until that last moment that it will support the foundation. I am of the mind that foundation must absolutely entirely be laid by father and mother.
it cannot be otherwise.
Yeah, because I don't want other people telling my kids this, that, and the other. I mean, I don't know math anymore, right? I was a math guy, then God played a trick on me. Now I'm all literature and language and all that stuff. I can't do their math. So go to school. Those people are smart. They know math, right? They know history, economics, whatever, all the classes, the little physics. Oh my God, I can't do any of that stuff anymore. But the foundation of life, how to think, the formation of the brain, though the school is contributing to it, though the stuff they see on socials, and all that is contributing, it must be, the cement must be poured by me. I must be the mixer and the pourer,
Yeah.
so that when it solidifies and hardens, I have had my hands in that. Entire I and my bride. And okay. And having said that, the church, her godparents, their godparents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends within the community, and even friends outside the parish community that are of like mind, but that the foundation is not in any way outside of my guidance, your bride, my bride. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to take chance with laying that foundation.
You shouldn't. You can't.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, I see the way that my daughter's mind is starting to be formed. I need to have an active process and an active
role in that process, huh?
Yeah, I need to not only be having an active role in that process, I need to be driving that
Yeah,
process. I
great.
need to be figuring out like how, because I know what is out there. I mean, I've worked with youth for how many years at this point, and seen so many different things and results, and seen where people come. I know that I don't want her to be like what everything out there's a book out there that I a friend recommended to me called The Dumbest Generation Grows Up, talking about millennials and all of that crap that they
Mhm.
dealt with. And like I don't want my daughter to go that rabbit hole. I don't want her to go that path. I'm being deliberate about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it, what conversations we're having with
Yeah.
her, so that that foundation can be set, so that
Yeah.
when she gets even to kindergarten, they're supporting that foundation. They're not replacing it.
Yeah, totally. Yes. Okay, fair. And this is not to be, boo-hooers or naysayers or doomsday people about like everything in the world is evil. I mean, yeah, there's crazy out there. But, in fairness to them, it's not their duty. It's not their responsibility. It's the same thing like when people bring kids to church. Like they expect you and I and our Sunday school program to give them everything about the faith
In 45 minutes.
in 45 minutes
per week.
per week if they bring them. Right. And so we don't do Sunday school in the summer. So you're talking about 35 weeks. So 35 hours a year. If they're perfect attendance, it's not even 35 hours, say 25 hours that we're going to give them the faith. I mean, we're supplementary.
Yeah.
The parents have to teach those kids, right?
Yeah.
That's the duty. And so, as we are not taking licks at schools and all that kind of stuff, there are different moral codes and value systems and all that stuff out there. And so,
Yeah.
if those people, in the school systems teach them their values, they may not be what I want my kids, like you said,
Yeah. I don't think anything that we've said thus far has been bashing what's going on out there. I think that we are just being clear that as parents, our job is to lay the foundation
Right.
and let the other stuff support that foundation. And we make choices as to where we might send our kids and what we might do. But we need to know that the guiding principles behind those choices that we are making are that the foundation setting is our job, and they become a piece of that foundation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and you're also combated with um, their friends and what they bring
Yeah.
with them. There was one story. I don't know if I should tell this, but I'm going to tell it because it made my heart, filled with joy. There is a parent in our community here who I totally love. Strong. I mean, she's fierce, in a good way, and is raising, children. And I remember one time overhearing a conversation between her and one of the children where, Mom, can I? No. Well, my friend so-and-so, his parents are letting him do whatever it is. And the response was, I'm sorry that his parents don't love him. But I love you, and this is what we're gonna do. And I was like, holy cow. In some sense, it was strong. But she was making the statement that, look, the decision I'm making is because I love you. And, those other people, they can do their things. Those are their children. But
Yeah.
we do this. This is how we behave. I said the same to my girls, right? Like, when they were growing and things like that would come up, I said, look, that's great. I said, but we are salamis and we don't do that. Or we are salamis. This is how we behave.
Yeah.
And it's in their heads.
Exactly. And we set that groundwork from the time they're little.
Totally.
Like my daughter, when she says, I don't feel good, I don't want to go to school, as a way to say, like, I'm going to just get out of going to school. I don't feel like getting out of bed. Because at 4 years old, she's already starting those teenage moments. I say to her, that's fine. But then these are the results of that. This is the consequence of that decision that you're making. You cannot do this. You cannot do this. You can't go to the park. You can't go
Right.
here. Because if you're too sick to go to school, which is something that you're supposed to do, well, that's not fair. I said, but that's how we roll. That's what we do in our house. That's how we operate. That is part of that foundation setting.
Right.
You take care of your responsibilities first, and then you can do all the fun stuff later.
Right.
We're not going to give you the fun stuff without doing the responsibilities. If you're too sick to go to church, then you don't get to go do anything else the
Yeah.
rest of that day.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Because that's for us, school or church particularly
Mhm.
is a responsibility, a duty, an obligation. And it's okay if you can't do it, but
Yeah.
that means then you are incapable of doing the other things too. That's
Yeah.
all.
My dad told me when I got to college, you don't have to be in church every single Sunday. I went to college in the same town where his church was, and in the same city. It was the city of God, Pittsburgh. And he said to me, you don't have to come to church every Sunday. But if you don't come to church on a Sunday, you don't come home for that whole week. So the whole week after coming to, if I miss church on a Sunday, don't come home, which meant don't drop your laundry off, don't show up for a home cooked meal, don't just walk in the door because you forgot something. If you don't come to church on a Sunday, you don't come the rest of the week. That laid a foundation in my head about what we're
What
doing.
was important.
Yeah.
Right. I think kind of we've established the
issue.
issues. Yeah. And, one of the other things we need to combat, and you brought up the millennials, haram. I mean, it's not to pick on them as much as just to call out what's out there. But one of the things, and it started, you often refer to it in the 60s with the self-esteem movement and
Yeah.
that whole debacle. And, we'll talk about this more later, but, the coddling of these minds and the things that we're teaching, that there's not a lot of ferocity anymore that's being delivered. And, it's all the stupid stuff that people talk about, the helicopter parents or the parents who call the teacher to yell at them because their kid didn't get an A or because their kid got busted, like the parents resolving those issues, or you deserve, or you're entitled to, or, I was uncomfortable or it offended me, all that kind of stuff that is out there. And whether the value is good or bad, it's someone else can decide. We can talk about that another day. But the reality is it is producing a softer generation that doesn't have all of the skills. They're not equipped with all of the skills to deal with real when they get out there.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great stuff. And really segues us nicely into, so what is the foundation that we're setting? Where does that foundation come from and how do we do it?
How glorious that you asked that question. It took a lot longer. I gabbed too much, but clearly for us, from our perspective, that foundation must be the word of God, his commandments, his instruction, his teaching. I mean, it's like a no-brainer. And it is, the commandments and the teachings of the Lord Scripture is not only saturated with those teachings, it is those teachings. Are those teachings. Anyways, the point of it is all of the teaching is Scripture. That being said, there are some moments where the authors of each of these books refer specifically to specific demographics. Today, let's look at some that talk about teaching children, teaching the subsequent generation, right? Because that's our duty. Like, if we're going to lay the foundation, I would hope and pray that, especially for our warrior saints, that foundation not only includes, but it's predominantly God's instruction, because that, as we know, is unto life. So maybe we start with Psalm 78. Psalm 78 it's magnificent. It's a long one. But Psalm 78, we can just read. Maybe we'll read the first few verses, first 8 or so. I'll just read it. I know you have it. Let's read it and then we'll chat. Give ear, O my people, to my teaching. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings from of old, things that we have heard and known, that our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, but tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might and the wonders which he has wrought. And then you jump down, verse 5 there, 6, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise and tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. And then it goes on in verse 8 and 9, so that they don't become like the previous, who were like rebellious and so on. So, you can see very clearly this is it's not hard to see, even in English, in translation, look, we heard it, we passed it on so that they might pass it on, right? In other words, and it's very clear, the commandments of God, the instructions of God, and that we might do so that they don't become like that previous generation that was rebellious, right? And a wicked generation. So it's that instruction must include or be grounded in the teachings, the commandments, the will of God. And any, scriptural aficionado knows that, from page one, the Adam in the garden story, I mean, he completely abandoned, rejected, ignored those commandments, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that case, the one commandment. And it was also, or ultimately, flip-flopped upside down back into its right position by Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane when he set his will aside to do God's. Those commandments and instructions are unto life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's our duty as parents, godparents, Sunday school teachers, clergy, whatever it may be, we must give that.
Yeah. It reminds me of the very end of the Sermon on the Mount. And at the very end, after Christ gives the law, retells it in that way, and he says, everyone who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house upon the rock. The rain fell, the floods came, the winds blew and beat upon that house. It did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. The foundation that we're laying are these commandments of God. It's the things that Christ has taught, the things that God has taught, the things that Scripture are telling us to do. Mm-hmm. Is that foundation. And the converse is true as he goes on and says, if you don't do them, it'll be like a house that falls on the sand and the winds come and the rains come and the house gets washed away. Similarly to a video of a house in Cape Cod where the sand underneath it has eroded away from years and years, and the house literally falls off the edge of this little sand dune. It's not good. You don't want to build on sand. You want to set that foundation. And God's commandments, as we hear in Psalm 78, as we hear in the Sermon on the Mount, are that foundation. They are that solid footing. They are the way that lead unto life, as you say.
Yeah, totally. Well said. That whole Cape Cod thing, great image. Yeah, I mean, that's what we started with. I mean, when you build a house, it's the whole image. I mean, you just said it. I don't even need to beat the horse dead, but like you lay cement. You don't build on sand, Yeah,
you set the slab.
Right. And that's what I think Psalm 78 is trying to tell us, and Matthew 7, as you read, is trying to tell us, like, make sure that slab is solid and strong. And I see the slab in this case as being the way that they think.
Mm-hmm.
Not just, at some point in their early stages, and you're probably doing the same, we taught our girls what to think. But as they grew, it shifted more into how to think, so that when they were thinking on their own, they were able to have a certain program in their brain, the process about how to think and look at things. You know what I mean? And so that, they still call me, and most of the time they just want to love on me and flirt with me. But sometimes they say, look, Baba, I don't know what to do here. What do we do? Da, da, da. So they want that guidance and advice, and I will always give that. But for the most part, they are thinking, both of them, in the manner in which their mother and I laid that foundation, so that whatever comes their way, whether it's academically in school or in relationships with these young men that are coming into their lives, and careers and jobs and families and all the rest of that kind of stuff, they're making decisions, but they make mistakes, as all of us do, but they're making decisions based on certain parameters, a certain protocol, which we have always tried to impart to them is founded on the commandments of God.
Yeah.
And the way to live.
And while we're setting that foundation of what to think and how we function and what we do, we're also starting the process of teaching them how to think, in the sense that we're having conversations with them, as young as they might be, to not explain as though I owe them the explanation, but to explain what's going on so that they see choice and they see why we choose one versus the other as part of what those foundations are, as part of what that process, that way that we go about things is, so that those decisions get not easier, but that they have that process mapped out for them, so that when they need to, they can start getting that way. And it's a parent's job to give them that process. I think it's fabulous.
Kind of like computer programmer, right?
Yeah.
If you want a computer to do a certain, task, you have to give it a neural path, right? You got to put in all the zeros and ones appropriately. And it's kind of what we're doing. Kind kind of what we should be doing. And the one thing that you were, I mean, I think it's great that they're 4 and 2 years right now. Yes, you have to start. There's an old saying, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but I think the idea behind it is totally true. There's a saying somebody told me that the Roman Catholic Church says, "Give me a man until he's 7 and he's mine for life." Now, whether that's the case or not, I don't know. But the point that they're trying to make is that by the time they get to 7, that foundation, that slab has been laid. So in other words, anything else is just building upon it.
Yep.
And I again, whether that's the saying is correct or, accurate how the Romans say it, or if they even said it, I don't know. But I like the idea because I can see and saw with my children, and I'm sure you're seeing it already. Dude, if you wait till they're like rational, it's too late. It's done. Got to do your work now.
Yeah. And when are kids actually rational?
I mean, some of us may
Yeah.
still be in search. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I was going to say especially daughters, but mine are rational. Not always, but they're great. It's interesting. Anyway, so I don't want to pick on all that kind of stuff. So I guess a question, why? Okay, so why would you decide to put God's word as the foundation?
Yeah. I think it's a valid question. I think it's an important question. I think it's something that we got to go there. And we see it as being foundational throughout Scripture. We see it as being, I mean, obviously in that section that I just talked about from chapter 7 of Matthew, like he's saying it's foundational.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying it's that rock, it's that slab, it's that, they didn't have concrete pour and all of that at the time, but
Right.
it's the solid footing that you are putting things on. When a bridge is built, even when it's going into water, they drive pylons all the way down until they find solid footing. Otherwise, what's your bridge going to do? I mean, it's in the water.
Right.
It's going to fall. It's going to collapse.
Right, totally.
You have to have that solid footing. And so that's the why. And I mean, we see it even in the way that parents teach within Scripture.
I mean, the why ultimately, which you're leading to using your image of the bridge, is that so that the bridge will do what it's supposed to do, which is to carry people over it's a bridge over
troubled water.
Sometimes they're troubled and sometimes it's just named Kwai. Anyways, you should watch. Have you ever watched that? Great.
No, but
Do you know who the main character was? Obi-Wan Kenobi.
no way.
Yeah, but he wasn't Obi-Wan.
That was like a cross. Oh,
It was Alec Guinness. It wasn't a crossover.
so it wasn't a crossover episode.
The bridge does what it's supposed to do. It carries cars and stuff over. In other words, so that it may go well, so that things are functional, proper as they're
Yeah.
supposed to be. We hear that in First Kings, right? So David's about to die, and he's transitioning power and whatever to his son Solomon, and he calls him in, and he doesn't say things like, "Here's where all the safe is. The money is here and hidden here, and here are the secret codes." He says the following. Listen to this. You're going to show us. I know they're going to see it, which is better. But I am about to go the way of all the earth, says David. Be strong and show yourself a man. I love it. This is how you want to be a man? I'm about to tell you. Keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways, keeping his statutes, his commandments, his ordinances, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses. And here's the kicker. That you may prosper in all that you do and wherever you turn. And I don't know if you have verse 4 up there or not, but just to continue, that the Lord may establish his word which he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons take heed to their way, to walk before me in faithfulness with all their heart, with all their soul, there shall not fail you a man on the throne of Israel. Right? Like David in this case, in 1 Kings is making the case that to follow those commandments of God, and he used very specific, as written in the law of Moses, which he's talking about the first 5 books of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
If you follow them, it will go well. And if you do, then David, your son, and his son, and his son, and his, it will be an everlasting dynasty, right? There will not fail one of yours on the throne if you will do what I tell you to do. Now, the sad part of the Solomon story is that in this book, it ends with him doing exactly not that. But the statement is, here's why you do it. God's word gives life. Same thing with Adam in the garden. Same thing with Christ in the garden. One did well, one did not.
Yeah. Yeah. And we want our kids to do well. We want to set them up for success.
Yeah.
We want to set them up with what really is going on, not just Now here we can bash what's going on out there. This shift where when I was a kid, when you were a kid, if a phone call went home, we were terrified of what would happen
Yeah.
because we were going to get in trouble. Now, the parents that used to be afraid of what their parents were going to do are the ones calling and yelling at the teachers that it's not my kid, it can't be my kid, it can't be this, it can't be like, that's not how this works.
Right.
That's not your job, is to instruct your kids.
Yeah.
What are you instructing them when you're playing these games with their school?
Yeah.
What are you instructing them when you're going after the coach that your kid didn't get enough playing time? Come on, it's T-ball.
Yeah. You know, to that point though, look, how I don't know. I'm sure it was the same. I know your parents, you know, the same with you is like, if there was a phone call, it didn't matter if the teacher said that I said the sky was green. I was wrong. The fact that the teacher had to call my mother meant I had done wrong. The assumption was I was the mess. I made the mistake. It was not immediately to pawn it off, to pass it off to, or blame it or deflect it or protect me. It was that she was going to kick my, you know what.
Yeah.
Even if I wasn't wrong, it was an opportunity for teaching, instruction, learning. And now the assumption, I see it completely different. You know, that assumption is, it's a very different assumption. Is mother's way correct? I mean, I think so, obviously, because I'm an incredibly stellar human being. So what she did was right. All right. And I tried to do that with my kids, but I'll concede that maybe it's not the right way. But I think it is. And I don't think that, you know, protective helicoptering and blame passing I don't think it's healthy.
Well, what ends up happening is people don't know how to face adversity.
Yeah.
Right? Like my son is 2. He's walking, but sometimes he still likes to crawl. Sometimes he likes to crawl underneath the coffee table. And sometimes that means that when he's picking his head up from underneath the coffee table, it looks like he's going to bang his head on the coffee table.
Yeah.
I let him.
Yeah, for sure.
I might be a bad dad, but I'm not. I let him bump his head because he's not going to keep making that mistake.
Right.
You know, I mean, he might keep making that mistake if he hits his head on the coffee table too many times. Fine. But he's not going to keep making that mistake. Those are things that they learn quickly. Like we just built a swing set in the backyard. It has a little rock wall. Now, this little guy struggles to use the rock wall, and he keeps trying. And I'm proud of him that he keeps trying.
Mm.
And the other day, I was in shock watching from inside the kitchen as he got almost to the top of this little rock wall. And I was like, good for you, good boy. Then he slid. And he slid all the way down. And he got a big bruise and like a scrape on his side. And I was like, all right, first I was afraid that my wife was going to kill me because it happened on my watch. But then I was like, all right, good for him that he's tried, that he struggled, and that he failed. Because now he's going to be able to figure that out and learn from that mistake and figure out what he needs to do next. And you know what he did? He came in. The next day, he went out there and he tried the rock wall and he got up over the edge.
Yeah, he learned from it. Good boy.
He learned from it.
Yeah.
And he figured it out.
Yeah, that's great. I love that stuff too. So maybe we'll kind of shift gears here. I wrote about it in my book too. There's a chapter in there I talk about my godson when he was like crawling. He hadn't even been a walker who wanted to crawl yet. And my cousin calls me, like all excited. It's my cousin's kid. And he was so excited. He's like, he just ate his first clump of dirt. You know, like he was so excited because they let the kid get out there. I mean, who wants to eat dirt? But I mean, the kid was a kid and he ate dirt, but I can guarantee you he probably didn't do it again. And the kid now is in his mid-20s and he's a freaking rock star. But his parents were not afraid to let him get out there. And that's one of the things, maybe this is where we can go. One of the duties of a parent, which is difficult, but one of the duties is to the proverbial teaching them to ride the bike, you got to let go, you know, and not protect them from everything and not keep them safe. There's that book. I know you and I both have read it. Jonathan Haidt, and I forgot the other guy's name, Lukianoff, whatever, but
Greg Lukianoff.
Yeah, the coddling of the American mind. And there's a story in there or a research that they talk about in this book that says, so it's talking about peanut allergies, right? So there's this whole thing that, you know, all these kids are getting sick with peanut allergies and, you know, even some can die and so on. And they cite a study that talks about, and I've forgotten the exact numbers. We'll have to look it up, you know, I feel like it was like 17% versus 2% or whatever. But kids that were exposed to peanuts when they were little had like a 2% chance of a peanut allergy. Those that were protected, like you go to class and there's no peanut allergy, no peanut butter or any of that kind of stuff allowed in case there's allergies. They were 17% or whatever the number was, much higher or 17%, more susceptible to, having the adverse reactions to peanut allergy. And so the statement was, give them peanuts as a little kid and let them figure it out. Now, I haven't read the science to be able to, speak to its veracity, but the point of me bringing it up is to say that on a high level, a contextual level, is that the exposure to challenges, the exposure to hard things, difficult things, like you said, when Johnny slid down the wall and scraped his side, the exposure to failure is essential. And yet we're so often as parents are afraid to let it happen, right? Because we love the kids. We don't want anything to happen to them, of course. But right? But life
comes at a cost.
Yeah, but life comes, and that stuff is going to happen to them. And are they prepared? Are they trained? Are they ready for that? In that book, Coddling of the American Mind, I think they're saying, you've got to let them, expose them to that stuff or allow them to be exposed to that stuff so that they can, learn to overcome it. And I'm not saying, hey, your kid has a peanut allergy, give him a Snickers bar. I'm not saying that, but I use that as the image just to get us in.
Yeah, because one of the things that I take away from that book that is so huge is they talk about the three great untruths. And they talk about the untruth of fragility. They say that whatever doesn't kill you makes you weaker. So we run around thinking that falling makes me weak, means I'm weak, and then we beat ourselves up about it, and we don't actually keep trying to overcome it. It also then goes into the untruth of emotional reasoning, that we're always supposed to trust our feelings. Well, I don't always want to trust my feelings.
No.
Sometimes my feelings are anger, and that's going to lead me to do things that I regret. Sometimes my feelings are like super sad, and so I'm just going to stay and hide in the corner in my room and not come out. Like, doesn't work out. And the other last untruth is the untruth of us versus them, that life is a constant battle between good people and evil people. Yeah. If everything is set up as a dichotomy that's a fight, which we see played out everywhere, then we're always looking for this fight. We're always looking, and we're never able to get to a place where the foundation that Scripture is teaching us, that is to call all of us to unity, that is calling all of us to unity under God's commandments, exists, because everything is set up in this false dichotomy. And I really think it's a result of that self-esteem movement that came out of the 80s, where we have a generation that's ill-equipped to handle stress and failure. We have a generation of parents convinced that their kids are the next best things. And ultimately, it has led to a generation of unchurched Americans, people that don't know what church is. They don't think that God matters because he's never been taught to them. His commandments have never been taught to them. And then those lies just explode out, and we're seeing what we see today.
Yeah, at a crisis.
Yeah.
So I guess ultimately the point and what we should try to offer to our warrior saints is that, as challenging as it is, when the kid's learning to ride the bike, you got to let go of the back seat. You can't hold it forever. You got to let them go. And they're going to fall and bang their head and scrape knees and all that stuff. It's like that scene in the movie 300, right? I know maybe not everyone's seen it, but it's talking about Sparta and the Spartan warriors. And, it's their battle of, I think it's Thermopylae, right? Like the 300 guys that fought against, 1 million Persians and Xerxes and all that kind of stuff. And it goes back, 13 years ago, that whole thing. And it shows the raising of the Spartan young men. And in this case, the king, Leonidas, who would become the king, Leonidas. And he goes out, they kick him out at like 7, make him go to the Ogogi and start fighting and practicing and training. And then I think it was 12 or 13, they send him off into the woods, like butt naked in the middle of the cold. And there's that scene where he has got to face the monster, right? And it's the wolf, and he's got the spear, and he's going to like be eaten alive by the monster, or he's going to, slay the beast and save his life. But the message that it gives, obviously in the story, he sorry if I ruin it for our crew, but he he does defeat the bad guy, in this case the wolf, and survives. But because of that and through that, he has overcome fear. He has conquered challenging things, and goes on to be the great King Leonidas, who with his small band of men conquers the great Persian army. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it was because he went through. That's the statement that they're making, and I think that kind of stuff happens in all the movies. I mean, the hero in all of our movies, he or she always has to face monsters and overcome them, and in that overcoming, we transform a little bit. And so I think the it's a travesty for us as parents to remove that from our kids.
Yeah. Because in that overcoming of adversity, it's not that whatever doesn't kill us makes us weaker. It's we have opportunities for learning.
Yeah.
And we then have opportunities to go forward and move forward and overcome the next thing, which is going to be harder, which is going to be bigger, which is the last thing prepared us for the next thing.
I love the way you said that, by the way. John, I just saw a title of a book, and I'll get out of your way, but John Maxwell's a leadership thinker, one of the foremost, and he's got a book that I'll probably butcher the title, but You Can Win or You Can Lose. All right, but that's not what the title of the book is. He titled it You Can Win or You Can Learn. Yeah. I was like, oh, and you just, anyways, sorry.
But that's the reality of things. That's what it looks like. That's what it means. That's what, like, if we just allow those things that are adversity to crush us, then we're always going to be living crushed because there's always going to be adversity.
Yeah.
And if we don't teach our kids how to get back up, right? There's that scene in Batman Begins. Why do we fall down, Bruce?
Yeah.
So that we can get back up again, right? We are always going to have those moments where we fall down.
Do you get back up again?
But you got to get back up again. You can't never let anything keep you down.
Sorry.
You have to keep getting back up, though. It's the reality. You have to rise and rise again.
Oh, you stole it.
I did because I had to. But you just got to keep getting back up. Because if you don't keep getting back up, then you're never going to learn how to get back up. And our job as parents becomes, after the bike ride and the fall, how do we help them get back up? How do we help them get back on the horse? And how do we move? And it becomes the key.
Yep. I think probably in that protective phase is that we're hoping for perfection.
Yeah.
So that nothing, bad ever happens to my sweet baby. I would love that, but that's not real. And so, to not give them the opportunity to practice and go through that, sliding down the rock wall and that falling off the bike, and all the rest of it, it's a disservice to them. So it's a hard thing. Look, when I let my kid, my little one, who now just graduated high school last week, when I let go of the back of that seat, and where we live, we're in the desert, so it's not like there's no grass fields for her to fall softly on. Gravel, that's our landscaping, and where one day we were riding and we have this plant, it's called an agave. It looks like, a big old spiky bush. And those fronds, whatever, they're hard. And I mean like a piece of wood hard with a spike. And the kid was like wobbling and was like going down towards it. And I was like, oh, like what if she falls and it gouges an eye or worse? You know what I mean? And she did fall and she fell close to it. Thank God. No harm, no foul. But it was like, that was horrible. Right. And I couldn't get there fast enough, even if I wanted to catch her and save her. So she is going to have to face it. And she made it. You know what I mean? Like, and now she can ride a bike. I mean, you have to just, I don't know. It's hard. And I understand that because nobody wants to see their kids suffer. But you've got to trust it. I think that's the key. You've got to trust that through that struggle and through that suffering, we are able to rise and rise again, as you said. I mean, that's, great line from that movie. The other one, just, there was years ago, I wish I could find it. I'm sure it's out there, but it was a Nike commercial, and it was Dwayne Wade when he was playing for the Heat. And there weren't any words, just, a few sentences popped on the screen, but it was just action shots of Dwayne playing basketball from high school through college and into the pros. And every clip was him going up to make a layup or a dunk and someone ramming into him and he'd fall down and these awkward falls. And it progresses high school all the way through the pros. And the last one you see him slide and he's on his belly with his arms under him. He looks like horror stricken, like, oh my God, this was horrible. And it says fall down 7 times. And then it cuts back to him. He pushes himself up and gets back in the game. And it says stand up 8. Just do it. Nike, whatever.
Yeah.
But like it's just that it was a great commercial. I thought it was a great commercial. If you get knocked down,
You got to get back up again. It's great.
Nothing's going to hold you down.
Well, and I think that with that, as we transition, like there has to be a line though that is decided. Like you're not going to throw your kids intentionally into situations so that they have that failure.
Right.
Right. There has to be some type of teaching that happens, but not that you're provoking them into those situations where they're going to be dragged into something that so that they will intentionally fall and they will intentionally learn from it, right? You're not going and provoking them into that kind of thing.
There's that saying, I think it's in the Gospel of Mark. I may get it wrong, but where Jesus is talking like, which of you parents, or maybe it's Matthew. Anyways, which of you parents, if your son asks for bread, will give him a rock,
Right.
Or let a serpent bite him, I mean, but if you love your kid, how much do you think God loves his kids and so on? And so, I mean, of course, no, I mean, I didn't, let's just say that I never like deliberately put my kids in harm's way. But as they faced life, and here's the other, I tried always to be present, to be able to talk through the conversations with them. And I noticed some of my lesser moments, my less, impressive moments, where I would say to the girls, here's what you got to do. As I got older and a little more mature, and as they learned too, I tried to say to them, all right, talk to me about it. How did you feel? What'd you think? What was the decision you made? How did that work out? Could you have made a different decision? What are the other options, that you could have chosen? Letting them talk themselves through it. And I was just there as a sounding board. That's a whole nother conversation on how to do that. And I am not good at it, getting better, but I noticed that it wasn't just enough to let them face all of those hard things. It was essential, but it wasn't enough. To complete it, there needed to be instruction. Like in Ephesians chapter 6, right? He says, fathers, don't provoke your kids to anger, don't mess with them and don't tweak them, but bring them up in the discipline and the instruction of the Lord. I mean, it's our duty. All right, daughter, son, you faced this challenge. These are the outcomes. What do you think? Yeah. And here's what, scripture may say this, God may say this. What do you think? How do you do?
Yeah, you have to have the conversation. When my daughter gets sent to timeout, she knows that she's not coming out of that timeout until we've had the conversation. She now knows enough to tell us that she's in a place where she can talk.
Oh.
And she's prepared to talk. And she's ready to have the conversation because she knows she's not getting out of her room without the conversation. Because the conversation is what matters.
Yeah.
Not what came up before it. Didn't matter that Johnny fell down from the rock wall. What mattered is if we have the conversation afterwards to talk about what did you learn from coming down the rock wall, and now how are you going to put that into action so that you can learn from it, which obviously he's 2, so that conversation was very simple.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a full AAR, after action report. But it was a brief moment that we're able to chat through that. The same goes with my daughter, where it gets a little bit more in depth because she's able to have a little bit harder conversation. Why did you go to timeout? What did you do wrong? What was the reason that you did that? What motivated you? And then how do we overcome it and make sure that we don't do it next time?
Yeah, great. I love that you do that stuff. We try to do
We have to.
Yeah, totally. I because ultimately here's, I guess, as we kind of wind down on all this stuff, but the goal ultimately is not to be able to say, look, my kid's better than yours, right? In that we're somehow, in competitive parenting, but to say we did our best to produce lions, to raise, God-fearing men and women, warrior saints, you know what I mean? So that they can do well in the world.
Yeah. We are given that instruction from the very get-go.
We read
right
at the start.
I mean, at the wedding ceremony, it says, grant them fair children for the fear and instruction of the Lord, right? Like our job as parents from the moment that we're married is if we're given children, we're supposed to raise them in the fear and education in the faith. Fear of the Lord, education of we have to do that stuff. Proverbs tells us, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. It's not just if you train your child in this way, then when he's old, he will go. It's a commandment. It's an instruction to the parents. You have to get out there. You have to train your kids.
Yeah.
It's your job. And if you don't, like we were talking about earlier, somebody else will. And I want to be the one that sets the foundation for my kids. I want to be the one that sets that training so that, God willing, when they're older and they go off to wherever they want to go off for college, hopefully to Arizona State University where they can live in my house. But I know that that's probably not going to be the reality, right? And I want that to not be the reality because I want them to see the world. I want them to explore. I want them to get out there and fight for it. But my job is, as their parent, to train them for that.
Right.
To train them so that they're trained for the marathon of life.
Right. You got it. That's why I was saying earlier, it's not a competition. My kids are better than yours. It is to prepare and train them to be just ruthless and relentlessly pursuing, truth and the commandments of the Lord. And here's the thing, right? Like, forgive and indulge the boasting moments. We tried hard, my bride and I, and I give her most of the credit because she really is an exceptional human being.
I do too.
But my girls there are a lot of things. First and foremost, I always talk about them being relentlessly ruthless. And I don't mean that they take swords and chop people's heads, but when they see a goal and a destination, something that they want to attain, they get it. I mean, they go after it. And yes, they failed. But most of the time they set high targets and go get it because they are just relentless in pursuing and doing the requisite work, good work ethic, all that stuff. They are, God-fearing women. Let me tell you, number one is away at college. I never said to her, you have to go to college. You're the daughter of a priest. You have to go to college. You have to go to church when you're in college. You're the daughter of her. She just found a church and went. The second one, who's getting ready to go, part of her decision of which school to choose was what was the church like around it, right? And I even said to her, I'm like, don't do that. You're there for education. No, Baba, it matters to me. I'm like, all right, so we put that in them. I'm not saying my kids are better than yours. I'm just saying we worked hard and that's what happened. They are beautiful people, both in their, physically and their souls, the compassion, the love that they have. They both have extremely high targets that they've set for themselves in their careers. And they may end up marrying and just staying at home and raising a family. Fine, great. I don't care, but they've got it all in them. I do care. I want some grandbabies. Not yet, but someday. My point in saying all of that is not to brag, but it is simply to say this. My bride and I worked hard and we did what God asked us to do. And thank God, and by his grace and his mercy, it works. Mm-hmm. And I say any of this to say to our audience that, look, we're proof in the pudding. And I think from what I can see already with your beautiful Eleanor and Johnny, that you're doing the same business. It works. God's way works. And so maybe that's an encouragement for those who are in our audience to watch. Look, give it a shot, man. Trust it. There's proof in the pudding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Great stuff. This was fun.
This is great.
Let's do it again.
All right.
How about next week?
Works for me.
I love it. All right. So for those who are not already at next week, join us Sunday for Orthros Liturgy at 9 and 10 a.m. Pacific, respectively. And we'll be back next week to keep grinding away at all kind of good stuff. For all of our warrior saints, keep paying attention. Even those who are not yet warrior saints, pay attention. We got some really fun things coming. We're working hard, grinding. We've got some good new excitement. Love you. We'll see you Sunday. We'll see you next week. As always, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.